Beautiful humans, it is good to see you all. Happy Thursday afternoon, morning, night, wherever you're at. I'm super excited to be here again with my dear friend Anastasia Gerali, our spiritual wealth evangelist. We had a beautiful conversation on Tuesday around old paradigm versus soul-aligned creation. And so Anastasia is a hypnotherapist. She's running a beautiful container for particular women stepping into wealth abundance. And what we are going to look at today is healing wealth wounds and how conditioning can hold us back to really stepping into money, pleasure, love. So Bob and Karen and Diana, as you have already found the chat function on the side. So this is awesome. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in there. There's also a question function here in the bottom if you want to do it there. And yeah, when you share your questions, we'll get to them. And yeah, let's maybe start with the exploration right now. Anastasia, when you speak about wealth wounds, what does it mean to you? How do you contextualize that so that we are on the same page what wealth wounds look like and where they come from?
Thank you. So all the clients that I have and all the people that come to work with me always believe that they have one of two blocks, right? A money block or a love block. And in my work, I've actually discovered that the money block and the love block is one and the same thing. It's the inability / unwillingness to receive, right? Because when they feel blocked, it's not that they feel blocked from giving, it's that they feel blocked from receiving, right? Or they don't feel like they're receiving the same that they're outputting. And when we talk about wealth wounds, we are talking again about receptivity blocks, right? What have we been programmed to believe is available to us and people like us, right? I'm using the terms like us, meaning people of my gender, people of my race, people of my religious group, etc., etc. I don't know where that beeping is coming from, sorry. So when we're talking about wealth wounds, we are again referring to what do I feel is not available to me? What is not abundant or abundantly available to me and to people like me, right? My friends, my family, etc., etc. Because there's a pattern there, and there's certain soul contracts that we have. Which is where, generational healing absolutely comes into play, ancestral healing, because certain stories and certain narratives and patterns will have been passed down from generation to generation to generation, which is why they keep repeating themselves within certain groups.
I think an interesting point that you're raising is people like me. And one of the questions that arises for me in that space, is it just about basically changing your social bubble? Like if you've been brought up in, let's say, like farming context, and you've always been around people that feel like, oh, you need to work really hard in order to make something real, then if you move yourself into whatever the high society of a city, and then changing the identity, I think that's sort of like the big piece in this. Can you speak to that a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. We are social creatures, so we have been programmed to want to fit in, right? So it's very easy to say, oh, okay, well, just change your environment, just change the people that you hang out with. Yes, that will absolutely help you to up level. But the truth is, if you don't believe that you fit into this new group, then you're always going to be an outsider, and you're always going to continue to create evidence to support that for you, right? Which is why, in theory, yes, that's the easiest shift that you could take. In reality, what you believe and what you've been conditioned to believe has everything to do with your upbringing, right? And more than likely, there's a part of your subconscious, because it's obviously not a conscious belief, there's a part of your subconscious that believes that if you step too far out of what's familiar, and what what identity helps you to fit in, then you're always going to feel like an imposter. You're always going to feel like an outsider, and it's going to be a never-ending battle of not feeling enough, not having enough, right? I need more. I need more to fit in. I need more to prove myself. I need more. So there's a little bit of an insatiable quality to that type of up level versus reprogramming and rewiring. When you reprogram and rewire on a subconscious level, you don't actually need to leave your social bubble, so to speak. Whatever and whoever no longer aligns with you and no longer vibrates with the energy that the frequency that you're vibrating at will naturally drop out, right? Because you've raised your standards, you've raised your boundaries, and along with that comes the people that aren't able to elevate with you, that aren't able to relate to you in this new way. So they will naturally fall out of your life without any effort and without any drama.
And now we're getting to that solution piece, like the reprogramming, rewiring. What does it look like? What modalities have you found or do you recommend?
As I said on Tuesday, I'm a little bit biased. always. Rapid abundance activation method for me is the smoothest transition. I'm a very big advocate for doing subconscious healing, because anything that we do consciously is on an ego level, right? And it'll only allow you to go so deep. Whereas if you heal, release, rewrite, reprogram, rearrange anything on a subconscious level, you start to create new neural pathways. You start to create new ways of interacting, new ways of being, right? It's coming back to your true value, your true identity versus the programmed value, programmed identity versus, efforting to change where change becomes inevitable. And it's Carl Rogers, the humanist psychologist Carl Rogers, that says that it's only through acceptance that you can transform something, right? If you start with the intention to transform, then you're not accepting it as is.
I love that. And I think for acceptance comes that sense of ease. And actually, just when you said that, I noticed that energetic shift of, instead of, going outward, it's just like, all sort of like settling in. I love
Sinking,
that.
right? Rather than pushing into something, we're sinking into being, sinking into the now.
Yeah, and I feel with that also comes that, because we spoke a lot about ego again, and that whole idea of, this is how it needs to unfold, sort of like all these like goals and like very clear visualizations on one hand, but then on the other hand being, what does life expect of me? Like, what is my role? And then sort of that curiosity to, and I think that's currently my quest a lot, to figure out, like, man, like, what am I really meant to do? Because there's so many...
what is being asked of me versus what do I want, right? What do I want is a very masculine, kind of very pursuing energy, where versus, what is required of me? Where can I be of service? Where can I be nurturing? Where can I be a team player? That's a more feminine energy, a more collaborative energy.
And the interesting piece is, like, what is asked of me is sort of like leaning in where there's receptivity, while the pushing, at least for me, often feels like, holy fuck. Like, it's like basically going against the wall and again and again. And it's a really like interesting piece. Maybe we can tap into this a bit more with the whole like healing of the wounds. Sort of like this masculine versus a feminine style of entrepreneurship or business in general.
Absolutely. You need both. And this is regardless of your gender. I just want to make it absolutely clear that we all have masculine, we all have feminine energy. Yes, there are certain stereotypes or that we like to play into, where the female gender has more feminine energy and the male gender has more masculine energy. However, in recent times, we've seen how that's shifted and changed, and that's no longer relevant, because we're still we're still in society, we're still kind of trying to find the balance collectively, individually. So we have a lot of women overexpressing masculine energy and a lot of men overexpressing feminine energy, right? Like we're still trying to find how to navigate in this world with each other, and being respectful and acknowledging, you know, what we are all contributing and what we're all giving in divine union, in union with other, in union with self, and in union with the collective. When we're talking about business, however, business has traditionally been more masculine in energy, right? There's a lot more structure, there's a lot more rules, just as politics, just as religious, they are more masculine. These are more sort of masculine designs, if you will. Which is why it's not uncommon that there are more men obviously thriving and obviously succeeding in these worlds, in these paradigms. However, that has a lot to do with, of course, men probably being given more opportunity to flourish and thrive. Whereas now, where we see, you know, women rising and elevating and stepping into high value careers, etc., we see these women kind of like overexpressing the masculine so that they can establish themselves. The feminine energy is the need, the desire to want to be part of a team, to want to contribute, to want to nurture, to care about everybody else's needs, right? As well. The masculine energy is the assertive energy. Mind you, I'm using assertive, not aggressive, right? The masculine energy is the leadership quality. Okay, leadership, not tyranny. Again, when we're talking about anything that feels overexpressed and over-exaggerated, we're talking about wounded energy. So I'm talking about sort of like light and dark masculine energy and light and dark feminine energy. Even in the dark, there are some traits that are really beautiful, really powerful, and really magnetic in both of those. And the feminine is to have that bigger vision, right, for everyone and for myself and for the contribution and for the project. The masculine energy is the leadership, the qualities, the action that is required to bring that vision into life. So when we talk about masculine, it's the ability to penetrate the vision, to pregnate the vision, and to give birth to that vision, to manifest it. If we're living too much in our feminine, then it's just all these wonderful, beautiful ideas that never actually come to fruition. Whereas if we're living too much in our masculine energy, we're doing, never really pausing, allowing things to flourish and thrive, and allowing things to take a natural, I guess, progression or a natural growth state before we need to start efforting and putting work into it again. So it's overworking, over delivering, and never pausing and allowing the season to fully complete.
It's really beautiful. That's sort of being the gardener of your project in a way. Yeah, put in the seeds and then water it, but then also just give it sun and air and time.
Give it space, right? Give it space to bloom. Yeah. You keep doing your work, be consistent in watering, be consistent in fertilizing, but then give it time, give it space to do what it's meant to do, so that you can see what your next step is. And it's a very sort of masculine trait to want to go for the next one and the next one and the next one, never really allowing you to receive. The masculine energy is the giving energy, and the feminine energy is the receiving energy.
It's interesting. So Diana was just saying here, she loves the point about the expressed and over-exaggerated energy and wounded. And I think it'd be beautiful to actually go into this a bit more deeply when we speak about wealth wounds. To what degree kind of do wealth wounds correlate with acting from wounded energy, or maybe even from kind of like, you know, your wounded child that wants to be seen, sort of what we talked about on Tuesday, while really once we integrate and act from soul, it's like, okay, cool. We know we will be on the right path, whatever this path looks like. And kind of, one of my friends, Helen, she was always saying, you know, just gotta let go of the riverbanks. Like, trust that the thing will allow you to float. And yeah, so let's unpack this woundedness a bit more.
I actually love that you said riverbanks, because that brings me to an analogy that I use quite often. The feminine energy is the water, right? The flow, the fluid. If the feminine energy doesn't have a structure, it will just bleed all over the place. It'll just flow uncontrollably and dry out, right? The masculine is the riverbeds, the structure that allows that feminine to flow, to be contained. If it's not contained, it's not powerful, it's not potent, it's lost. So it needs to be contained, which is where, we have to have this balance between the fluidity, the surrender, but then we also need to have some sort of structure, some sort of model to hold that vision, to follow, right? Otherwise, where are we going? And there's a lot of, there's a very big sort of, I want to say trend, I guess, with, talk of the rise of the divine feminine, which is wonderful. I love that. But in order for the divine feminine to rise, the divine masculine also has to rise, right? Which is why I'm actually not a fan of, or not such a fan of modern feminism, the way that it's been portrayed today, as in pulling down men for women to rise. Like that's not going to help society. It's not going to help us as individuals. It's not going to help couples. It's not going to help businesses. It's not going to help anyone, right? But creating that space for everyone, whether they're in their feminine or their masculine. I have a more masculine energy. I am someone who is a doer. I'm someone who is a giver. And I've had to learn how to be more in my feminine energy, how to be more surrendered, how to allow myself to receive, allow myself to be held, to be contained. So, as I said, like gender is regardless, which is why I'm explaining, how it's worked for me. So before my first business, I was very much in my overexpressed masculine. I was giving. I was undercharging. I was people pleasing, and it was much more important to me the clients or the customers' experience, to the point where, if anyone said boo, I would give them a refund. I was so eager to please, and I was so eager to serve. And I was very conscious about how my service was being received. It was important to me that my service was received in the way that I needed to feel validated. And then when I rejected that model and I relaunched my business, I was in my absolute feminine. I was just like, okay, surrender and just stay creative and be in the flow, to the point where, things just weren't getting done. Things just were, yeah, it's fine, we'll do it later, next season. It was too relaxed, too fluid. And I wasn't meeting deadlines, right? Because I wasn't leading myself. I was looking very much to be led from the external, and in that case, because I was self-employed, I was very much being led by my production partners. Like what they said, I did. What they, whatever deadline they gave me, I just agreed to. So again, not a healthy model. It feels much more surrendered, but we're not really grounding into manifesting in the 3D world when we're like that. Whereas now, there is this push and pull energy. There's this give and receive, and practice non-attachment to how it's received, because how it's received is not my responsibility, right? As long as my intention, as long as I believe in my service and I believe in my product, and I believe in my quality and I can stand behind it in integrity, how it's received is not my business. How it's received is 100% up to that person, right? That person's perception, that person's views, that person's beliefs around value, etc., etc. And when you are able to self-lead and you're able to lead others as well as a result of being a sovereign being and being self-led, in integrity and in love always, the truth is that the people that want to work with you and for you, and the people that want to purchase from you, are always going to be aligned with that frequency, with what you're resonating at, right? If your bottom line is money, you're going to be attracting people who, their bottom line is money. So there's going to be a lot of debates around money. There's going to be a lot of complaints. There's going to be a lot of, is it worth it? Isn't it worth it? There's going to be a lot of intention and need around money, right? The bottom line. Whereas if your intention and your vision is to create a great service or a great product, right? Then the people that come to you, that's going to be their focus, right? The great service, the great product, they're going to sign up with you because that resonates with them. The price or the investment isn't actually going to be a factor, right? Because we're no longer comparing apples with apples. We're comparing apples with pears, and those are two different experiences.
Yeah, it's super, super fundamental that what your bottom line is also what others will see. And it's beautiful what you say about the rise of the feminine, because part of my work is like having a men's group for delivering or creating a space for the cultivation of the divine masculine. And it's because it is so important. Yeah, as women rise in their power, that also men are able to maintain that. And you know, often when I speak with my partner, we're having this conversation where it's like, how do we serve each other? And there is that component of, I also feel, coming back to this riverbank analogy, yes, the riverbanks contain the river, yet also the river moves these riverbanks over time, you know. And so it's kind of like, how does the feminine again give shape or definition to the masculine, you know? And it's this interesting kind of like push and pull. And I guess when you were speaking about leadership and that being self-led in a way, maybe we can unpack a little bit how wounds kind of like also show up in teams and business. Because for example, you know, when you're speaking about this creative space, I've been also in that creative space for probably a year now, and it's really enjoyable. Yet I also feel like, where's this really kind of going? And maybe it's a bit like this design process, you know, we diverge and have all these ideas, and you converges is like the product, and then that diverges and converges. And so I feel my business partner, he's always been very, yeah, good sounding board. I think he's been the one who was like, okay, that's the path that we're gonna be on, you know? And yeah, maybe let's talk a bit more about kind of like solopreneurship, entrepreneurship, and wounding around this as well. You know, like, are we maybe just wanting to be entrepreneurial because we don't want to be questioned, and just basically want to dilly-dally, but ultimately not really deliver anything, while kind of self-deluding ourselves, like, yeah, we're creating value, but ultimately, like, what is it that you really create?
Wow, what a great question. I love the way that you phrased that. Yeah, is it for everyone? If it's not for everyone, then why does everyone seem to want to pursue that, right? I think entrepreneurship is the fastest learning curve that you will ever throw yourself into. You know, whether you become a business owner through that experience or not is irrelevant. I think the need to want to create and the need to want to explore another avenue is probably an indirect need for the soul to want to expand and grow, you know, and that experience will throw you from like extreme highs to extreme lows. You know, we absolutely know what the roller coaster ride of entrepreneurship looks like. And then of course there's this very unhealthy, dare I say, almost toxic hustle culture that's been over glorified, like hustle, work. Gary Vee was a big champion of hustle, right? Hustle culture. And you can see how even his message has changed now. And he's talking a lot more about having passion for something versus just doing. So even his focus went from like overexpressed masculine to now, you know, a more healthy dark feminine, because passion lives in the dark feminine, which is really, really interesting. And he's championing people to follow their passions rather than championing people to follow something that's going to make them money, right? And how the wealth wounds will limit you in entrepreneurship or on the journey to becoming a business owner and potentially, you know, a CEO. Whatever you haven't healed within yourself, whatever you haven't rearranged belief-wise, on a subconscious level, those little devils are going to appear and reappear, and they're going to make the normal challenges that you're going to be facing as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, as a business owner, as a CEO, they're going to make them seem so much bigger. So it's a little bit like casting shadows on the wall, where you just use your fingers and you do a little picture, but on the wall, it's this huge like monster. It's a little bit like that. Like if you aren't doing the internal work, which is why rapid abundance activation, simultaneous healing, and expansion. You can't heal without expanding. You can't expand without healing, because if you just pursue the expansion, you will burn out. That's very common for, 60% more women than men burn out. That's not uncommon, because we're over expressing in the masculine, right? Overdoing, over delivering. You will burn out, and you will up a limit. Your nervous system will want to shut down. You're going to want to self-sabotage. You're going to want to retreat when things get too scary in a good way, or too scary in a bad way, right? Too scary as in, shit, I could possibly fail and lose everything. But then there's the flip side of that coin. Too scary as in, oh my God, what happens if we succeed? Like, what's the next step? What are the next challenges? Like, are we ready for that? No, we're not ready for it. It's safer, it's more familiar to stay here than it is to go to that next level, because that next level is going to require a higher IQ and EQ.
And that's super interesting what you highlight there. John, my business partner for our Connected Impact Mastermind, that's the thing that he always highlights. Toby, you're really, really comfortable in that sort of like super early stage where it's like, okay, like, where are the possibilities?
It's new. Yeah, it's the conception. Exactly. It's new, it's fun.
Yeah, and it's this thing where now we're sort of like in this piece of like, okay, we have something that works, it's validated. And now it's like, wow. And I have this week been like totally kind of like freaking out of like, man, I do want to like change direction, all these things, change names. And he was like, Toby, it's a pattern of yours. Like, just fucking stick where you're at. And
thank
actually,
you.
like,
and Diana just asked the question. Yeah, Diana just asked the question, how do we discover what the potential unhealed things are? Toby, you've literally just illustrated that, right? Getting sidetracked and distracted. Like, what if we changed the name? What if we did a rebrand? Like, focusing on something else rather than really grounding into growing these seeds and growing these roots. And that's one of the ways that you can discover your unhealed patterns. Through your patterns. It's what is your status quo? Like, what do you tend to do? Do you tend to go into overwhelm? Do you tend to get distracted? Do you tend to procrastinate? What are these patterns that keep coming up? I had a client as well that every time she was doing something new or about to launch a new business, or she had a new idea, or she was about to finish some new training or course that was going to elevate her professionally, she always suffered from vertigo. Like, quite literally, she had to lie down and do nothing because her body had manifested a physical self-sabotage pattern. Now, for the majority of us, those are sort of unconscious behavioral traits, but sometimes it could even be a physical symptom. So for me, it was IBS. I always had like terrible stomach pains and cramps, which are down to stress, aka. But the reality is that it didn't appear all the time. It appeared in periods where there was potential for more than I was familiar with.
Yeah, super profound. Let's so Faz has been asking like two questions. One was around how can you heal from subconscious wounds, and can you ever heal from it? I'll take this one first.
Thank you. How can you heal from subconscious wounds? Is work on a subconscious level. There are 5 levels that we should be working through and we should be working with. So the first is the physical, right? Like, physically, what is my body trying to tell me? My body is also a barometer of what I have stored, of the traumas that I have stored. The second is the energetic level, right? The frequency. What am I doing to change my frequency? What am I doing to change my energy levels? The third, which is my favorite, is your emotion body, right? What are my emotions telling me? What are my triggers? What are my behavioral, traits that keep reappearing in certain moments? Because if I can start to become more self-aware and I can start to see, oh yeah, that that happened and that made me feel like this, which reminds me of another time when I felt like that, which had to do with that happening, right? So starting to link where my emotions are trying to tell me what I am still holding on to, what is still being triggered within me. And when we work through the physical, the energetic, and the emotion body, that allows us to then tap into our higher self. Right? That allows us to then, through higher self, tap into super conscious, where you get to be a super conscious creator, where you are creating with universe, with source, and asking questions like, what am I being called to contribute? What am I being called to create versus what do I want to create? What do I want to experience?
That is powerful. This whole piece of humility, where it's like, because I think this is like an interesting piece with like entrepreneurship on the one hand, where it's like, yes, we're all here to kind of like build our own little world that, it's like, everything is kind of set exactly as we want, rather than being sort of like open for the world. And I guess that's really where this whole wounding piece is, I think, so relevant. Because the moment we open ourselves to another human being or to a new possibility, it will highlight things, at least for me always, that I haven't looked at and potentially like very deliberately have looked away from. Because I was like, this is like something I don't want to fucking deal with. And I will look in this direction, only this direction. But then it's ultimately, it's never ever really creating that sense of full integrity. And it always, I think, links back to the beginning of the conversation, always feels like an imposter, rather than like, yes, I'm humbly showing up in service of my fellow human beings here, and let me see what I shall do. And people will come to the fore and support.
I hear you. And I think actually I could just to answer that question, the second part of the question. I mean, what can we do? For me, it's work on a subconscious level. My modality is a form of clinical hypnotherapy. It's just the easiest, fastest way to get to the root of the issue, and then to identify what purpose it's still serving. Because if it's still there, it's still serving some purpose, some need, some unconscious desire to want to stay safe. And a challenge that I actually heard of recently, which I absolutely love, right? One of the biggest fears that people will have is the fear of rejection. And that's where failure comes from, right? If I'm rejected, then I've failed. If I'm rejected, I'm not accepted. And into your reptilian mind, of course, like thousands of years ago, if you were rejected by your tribe or your mother, you literally would die. You would die out in the cold, or another tribe would come and kill you, or a wild animal would come and eat you. Which is why we still have this deep need for acceptance and this deep need for wanting to fit in. And a deep desire for the human race's survival, right? Because it really quite literally has nothing to do with your individual survival. It has to do with the survival of the human race, why we have this programming in us. Guess what? The human race is going to survive with or without you, So what about contributing to this race or to this collective or to this group, to this family by thriving, right? Because you are one individual living in your own little world, but you are a cell that makes up the full body, right? This is where the law of oneness comes into play. Yes, we are individuals, but we are also one. Right? And by me giving myself permission to flourish and thrive, by me giving myself permission to go to my next level, by me giving myself permission to unleash all of my gifts and all of my potential, I get to share that, right? And I get to multiply it and amplify it. If I don't tap into it, then there's nothing to share. There's nothing more than an idea, that someone else could run with, because you weren't brave enough to run with it, because you had a wealth wound telling you that you're not worthy, that it's not available to you.
This is really fascinating. I feel this whole like giving permission to the self, or like giving yourself the permission rather than actually looking outwardly to receive that permission. And I feel the other piece is, what's your take on turning your wound into a gift?
All of our wounds are gifts. right? Because they're all lessons that we signed up for. We signed up for these lessons, and until you learn the lesson, you're going to keep repeating it, and you're going to keep repeating different variations of that lesson. Now, what I like to do is I like to zoom out. Like when people say, oh, I've got a money block, let's zoom out. Let's see what other areas this receptivity block is showing up in. Are you showing up in your health? Are you showing up in your relationship? Are you showing up in your friendships? Are you showing up in your spirituality? More than likely, if you feel blocked in one area, if we zoom out, in that chaos, we can find an order, we can find a pattern, we can find a commonality. And the common denominator in all these areas is always you. It's always you, right? There's no money block. Money is not the one that's rejecting you. You're the one that's not receptive or absorbent of it. There's no love block. Love isn't the one that doesn't want to flow in your direction. It's your inability to give and to receive. And there was a beautiful question here. How can I also be more feminine when I'm in my masculine? Thank you so much. What a great question. I love to play with masculine, feminine, right? So I will lead, and then I will sit back and I will allow others to do what they need to do, right? To trust them, to delegate, and to allow them to do what I've hired them to do, or what I've asked you to do. When I'm leading, but then I'm also doing the work, right? And I'm also controlling and I'm micromanaging. I'm not surrendering to the feminine, to the ability to receive, right? So I'm still in my give, do. And you become a martyr, basically. So that's where we're too much in our masculine. When I'm in my masculine, I also pursue, and then I sit back and allow what I've pursued, so the seeds that I've planted, to grow, to come back to me. So it's not just about planting, and then going planting more, and planting and pursuing. So this is actually where we get to practice non-attachment, right? When I've pursued a goal, a person, when I've pursued a dream, a vision, yes, I'm going to take steps and I'm going to take actions and I'm going to complete the tasks that I need in order to put myself in that direction, right? Becoming really intentional and directional about where I want to grow, and then allowing the time. This is where most people actually start to waver, the time gap. Because we're so spoiled and we're so used to getting things instantly. I order on Amazon today, by tomorrow I'll have it, that we don't know anymore what it means to wait. I mean, who had a pen pal here where we used to write letters to each other and we would post the letter and you'd wait for months before you got a letter in return? We're so used to now not waiting and wanting things instantly that we give up. We give up before the harvest grows. We give up before the fruit ripens.
I think it's super important, the time gap piece. And this is, I think, also the other interesting piece that you said on Tuesday, where it was collapsing time on the other hand. And so I feel there's an interesting paradox where on the one hand, yes, sit back and relax and receive and allow for things to grow. And then I guess the other piece is becoming more bold by realizing, yes, I have already had like a 50K year. Why not have 60 or 50K is like 6 months or 3 months? So
just knowing that it's possible. Like if I've been able to achieve that in 12 months, then what's stopping me from achieving that in 6 months? What's stopping me from achieving that in 3 months? You know, I'm playing with that energy. Like, okay, what structure do I need around me to support that fluidity, that growth, right? So if it took me 12 months to create X amount, what would it take? What structure, what team, what delegation, what would I need to do in order to collapse time into 6 months, into 3 months, and into 1 week, right? And then knowing that it's possible because you already hold that vibrational frequency. You've already been there. Now, how about being there sooner?
And I think there's an interesting piece arising here around structure. And it ties to the whole wound piece. And I'll go with the relationship example. So, you know, kind of like back in the days, like marriage was this thing, you're married and you're stuck with this person kind of through thick and thin. And I mean, now we live in a world where it's a lot easier to kind of like change partners, and there's like less stigma, which at the same time also opens the possibility. On the one hand, yeah, step away because the thing is unhealthy and actually like, you know, would only lead you down a terrible path. On the other hand, I think there's this really interesting kind of discernment we need to have. Like, would I step away because it feels uncomfortable, because it actually highlights a wound and triggers me? And by being present in that container is actually just going deeper. And I think the same goes sort of like in the business context. You know, at what point do you know, okay, the structure is good, and it's me that gets triggered, and it's me that realizes there is a wound that needs to be healed. Like, where do you draw the line for yourself, or what kind of like tools do you have to know whether the structure is messed up, or whether it's you just being triggered on a new wound that you're supposed to heal?
Yeah. So we have this strange belief that if you're an adult, you should be able to do everything and you should be able to know everything. You know, it's like we learn throughout our childhood, throughout our teens, maybe even we go into sort of like tertiary education, and we continue to learn through, you know, education. And then when you graduate, you're just supposed to know how to do things. And then we stop asking questions. We stop working on ourselves. We stop developing certain skills and certain abilities. And then we wonder why we plateau. We wonder why, you know, we reach a point in our career, in our relationship, in everything where things just, they're not going anywhere, right? And we're bored. So we start to create distractions for ourselves, or we start to look for reasons to be sad or unhappy or whatever. We never ever stop growing, and we never ever stop evolving. What you need to look at as you grow older, because you should be getting wiser as well, is how much time am I spending in my zone of genius, right? How much time am I spending in my zone of competence? How much time am I spending in my zone of incompetence, right? If I'm spending time in my zone of incompetence, then I can't expect the same level of growth or expansion as I can absolutely expect in my zone of genius or in my zone of excellence. When I'm in my zone of genius or excellence, that's when I know to hire other people in their zone of genius, in their zone of excellence. There's other people out there that can do this better than me. I don't need to do it all, right? And that is very much where the solopreneur will get stuck and will burn out and will grow, but not be able to scale beyond, you know, beyond the 24 hours in the day that we all have. Because they're spending all their time in their zone of competence, and they're learning new skills, going from incompetence to competence, and they're kind of getting stuck between competence and zone of genius. But they won't pursue or continue to expand to zone of excellence. Zone of excellence requires leadership. Zone of excellence requires trust.
I love that. Can you explain a bit more what you mean with zone of genius, or what it means to you? And then there's a question from Diana that I think would be interesting to get to.
So zone of genius is the things that you know that you're good at, right? There is no doubt in your mind that you can deliver this, that you can do this, that you are good at it, right? So there's no self-doubt, there's no low self-esteem around, you know, what you should be charging. There's just no doubt, because I know this because I've had so many years of experience, right? I know this because I've been doing this for 20 years, right? I've got all these case studies, I've got all this evidence. I trust myself in this. Zone of excellence is where you tap into your superconscious. Superconscious is where you become a conduit for anything and everything that is destined and designed to flow to you and through you and from you. That's the area that I love to create in, right? With our superconscious, through our higher self into our superconscious, where we become conduits for creation, where we allow ourselves to be the hands, the feet, the mouth, the eyes, and the ears of something greater than you can currently comprehend or that you can currently imagine.
I love this super conscious piece, and let's get back to this once we answer Diana's question. So Diana is asking, like, how do I strengthen my receptivity and my being comfortable with receiving? I have always been the giver, giver, giver. I feel like I don't know how to receive. I think it's so topical. Thank you, Diana, for asking a question and being so vulnerable.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. Actually, like right there, you've exactly expressed the wounded masculine, right? The wounded masculine is the people pleaser, is the one that wants to give and give and give, because there's actually an intention behind you giving. You're giving because you want to be validated. You're giving because you want to be loved. You're giving because you want to be good and kind. You want to be seen as good and kind. You're not giving from a place of overflow, not attached to how it's going to be received. So that is where you are blocking yourself from receiving, right? It's wounded masculine energy, right there, or otherwise known as immature masculine energy, the people pleaser, where you're very, very focused and conscious of the other person's needs and what you have to do or what you have to give in order to be approved or in order to be validated, in order to be accepted. Diana, healing, you got to do that shadow work. It's not something that you can just say, okay, from today on I choose to receive. No, you need to do the healing work. You need to work on a subconscious level. There is a deep pattern and imprint there that has a lot to do with your self-worth, right? So you have linked, I'm just using you as an example, please don't take this personally, you have linked your givingness to your value. If I'm not giving, if I'm not productive, if I'm not doing, then I'm not of value. Whereas the ability to receive means knowing and trusting your value, having no doubt that everything that I put out there is going to come back to me tenfold, 50-fold, 100-fold, because I'm living in a state of overflow, right? It's a little bit like, you know, those little circuits that we used to create in school. What you have essentially, there's a short circuit. You've got a connector that's not connecting the giving and the receiving. So the energy is going out, but not coming back in. And at some point, when you give, and you don't fill your cup, you will run out, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. You have to do the healing work. There's no shortcut. I know people don't want to hear it, but there's no hack, there's no shortcut, there's no affirmation, there's no meditation. You need to go into the subconscious level to do this work. This reprogramming needs to happen on that level.
Amazing. Yeah, I can certainly resonate with you, Diana, there as well. And you highlighted something there which is interesting, Anastasia, this giving to get.
And conditional giving.
Absolutely, yeah, conditional giving. And I think on Tuesday you highlighted that distinction between give and take and offer and receive. Maybe just highlighting that that difference before we step into the super conscious creation piece for the last few minutes again.
Yes, absolutely. So this is where, you know, people seem to misunderstand. They think that everything is an exchange. And while I absolutely do believe in exchange, everything is currency, right? If I'm giving to get, I'm very conditional in that I'm making a trade, right? I'm giving X to get Y. And if I'm not getting Y, then I'm not going to give X. But what happens when you do that is you're blocking yourself from receiving, or you're blocking yourself from giving. And when you're blocked in one direction, you're blocked in the other direction. So even though you may be receiving, or it looks like you're receiving, you're very highly paid, or you have a partner that really loves you, it doesn't feel like it's ever enough. It doesn't feel like it's ever enough because it's not fulfilling, right? Because you aren't fulfilled, and you aren't conscious in that beautiful flow, that beautiful flow and overflow of knowing that whatever I've given and whatever I've received, there is more of it out there, right? We're not running out. It's still coming from a place of lack consciousness, right? I'm giving you $10, I want 10 bananas, and not one banana less than that. But what if I gave you $10 and you wanted to give me 20 bananas, right? That's going to create like a short circuit in no, this isn't right. I'm giving you 10, I expect 10 back. Or, you know, the other very, very unhealthy way of seeing it is like, I want, but I'm not willing to give anything, right? I deserve it. There is a very, very big sense of entitlement, especially in our generation, in the millennials, where they're not willing to give anything and they think that they deserve everything. Yes, everything is, abundance is your birthright, but what did you contribute, right? What have you given? What are you giving? Because that is always going to equal what you're receiving and what you're able to absorb as well. I want this to be clear that receiving is not the same as absorbing. We're always receiving, but how many of us truly absorb? How many of us truly feel that we've been nourished and nurtured and that we've absorbed that gift, right? And being able to be present in having and being. I have had a client that in the very early days of her working with me, she was working on healing this receptivity block, and she received quite early on, she received a 20,000 euro payout from some accident that she had been in years and years and years before, and it wasn't moving. And when she started doing this work, she suddenly received this money out of nowhere. She'd kind of given up on it. And when she received the 20,000 euros, instead of investing it in herself and in her business, she immediately gave it all to her family. So did she receive? Yes. Did she absorb? No, because she felt so uncomfortable with having. And she was so in her wounded masculine, it was more of a priority to her to be seen as generous, to be seen as kind, than it was for her to receive and to absorb and to become abundant, so that she could then give to her friends and family from overflow.
There's so many more themes coming up right now when you speak about the absorbing piece. And it's even like, even if we absorb, are we just absorbing the things that we've conditioned to absorb? Because there's always things coming to us, but are we actually absorbing the things that we desire, or are we absorbing the things that we are?
Because it's there, right? It's free.
Absolutely.
And this is very much like the freebie kind of mindset, like people that sign up to do free things, and people that will search for free things, like they're consumers, not creators. When you are too much in your consumption, you're insatiable, and you're not creating because you're spending all your time and energy looking for what there is to consume. So it's a little bit like being a hoarder of information, or a hoarder of things, and never feeling satisfied. It's like living on McDonald's versus having 3 really healthy, nourishing, nurturing meals a day and not needing more than that.
Absolutely. And for the last few minutes, let's get back to the conduit for creation piece. So, Zone of Genius, and what have been your ways to find your zone of genius, and like what does it feel like being in that space, so that we maybe can give people an indication of like, you're in the right space. Just stay there.
Gosh, it's pretty spectacular. It's like being in orgasmic bliss when things just like pop, 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 and you're just like, oh my God, like I didn't think of that. I didn't know that was possible for me, and opportunities and people and ideas, and knowing that you have enough of the masculine and the feminine energy, not just to hold the vision, but to bring that vision to life. I mean, for me as a course creator, and as a creator, it's just the ease with which things come to me, the ease with which I'm able to create, the ease, and for me at this point now, the speed at which I can create is just so, it's so surrendered. It's so surrendered. I think that's really the key word here. When you are in your, when you're tapping into your zone of super conscious, when you are connecting with the divine, source, universe, God, whatever title you want to put on it, it's totally irrelevant to me. Something greater than everything that you currently can think of as a solution is only a limited version of what you're truly capable of, right? Because we're natural problem solvers, especially the masculine energy. Its talent is to want to fix things, to want to solve problems, right? We're looking for problems. What business opportunities can we look at to create solutions? what if you didn't start with a problem and a solution? And what if you just started with a vision, with a mission, right? And allowed that to evolve for you. I have a dear, beautiful friend who is the founder of a charity called Rare Foundation. And he started with the vision to just build a school for the Maasai children in Tanzania. Like that was his initial idea. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to go do that. I want to do something meaningful. And he started with the school. Once he built the school and the kids started coming to school, attendance was very low. And this is where, you allow the universe to unfold for you. You don't need to think up everything and think up all the solutions. The school attendance was very low. Why? Because the villagers needed their children to work, because there was an extra pair of hands, right? There wasn't enough food to go around, so they needed their children to work. They would rather have their children working than sending them to school to get an education. So he was like, okay, next step is clearly to offer school meals. As soon as they started offering school meals, their attendance got better. They started to look for, like, okay, well, what else do these people need? What else does the school need? What else do the children need? They started installing solar panels so they would have electricity in their villages and in the school. The next thing was, well, what's the next need of these people? And it was clean water, because the children were still walking miles and miles to go and get clean water. So they started drilling for water. It's just such a beautiful evolution that started with laying one brick with the intention to build a school in a place far, far away on the other side of the world, with just being guided to do something more meaningful, more purposeful.
I love that. So as a summary for today, Anastasia, what would you say, or maybe like the 3 key points that you'd love for people to take away on how to heal their wealth wounds?
I think I'd like to give you a mantra just to help ease you and make this journey more peaceful. And the mantra would be that my work is of high value and deserves massive compensation. My work is of high value and deserves massive compensation. Put your hand on your heart and say it with me.
Amazing.
My work is of high value and deserves massive compensation. So what I did there is I didn't make it about you. I didn't say I am worthy, I deserve. My work is of high value and deserves massive compensation. It's not about me, not about my ego. It's not about my hang-ups, my worth, my worthiness. It's about what I'm here to deliver. Take ego. Ego is ego in Greek, it's me. Take me out of the equation. My work is of high value and deserves massive compensation.
Super beautiful. And we will see you again on Wednesday next week, when we actually go all in on the energetics of receiving, something that has come up a few times in our conversation today. So also for all of you who are keen to connect more with the awesome work that Anastasia is doing, there's fabulous links all in the description of the crowdcast. And yeah, just work with her, get spiritually wealthy as fuck.
Yeah, if you want to raise your value and your spiritual and wealth consciousness and create a life of overflow, I'm your girl. If you want to take it, then I'm definitely not your girl.
Amazing. Lots of love, Anastasia. Looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you, darling. Thank you all so much for the great questions as well.
Yes. Have an awesome rest of your week, everyone. See you soon.